Hello, it's Jack Shitama, and today's lesson is the focusing question. The focusing question comes from the book The One Thing, The Surprisingly Simple Truth Behind Extraordinary Results by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Gary Keller is the CEO of Keller Williams, which is the largest real estate firm in the world. And the focusing question goes like this: what's the one thing you can do such that by doing it, everything else would become easier or unnecessary? And what this question is about trying to bring your big goals down to small steps. In the book, they say think big and act small. And so when you say, what's the one thing, this is about focus. It's not two things, it's not three things, it's not four things, it's one thing. You can only do one thing at a time. In fact, one of the proverbs is if you chase two rabbits, you won't catch either. So this is about focusing on the one thing. And then by saying can do, you're not saying should do or could do or would do. You're not doing those woulda, shoulda, couldas. You're focusing on something that's actually possible to do, something that is doable by you. And such that by doing it, if you take action, then everything else will become easier or unnecessary. The Chinese proverb is the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And I believe that that's actually what the journey of faith is about as well. When God calls us in a certain direction, God doesn't lay out the entire path for us. Otherwise, it wouldn't be faith. What God asks us to do is to take one step. When God called Abraham to leave Abram was his name at the time. When God called Abram to leave his homeland and to head towards the promised land, he didn't know it was going to be some 750 miles. He just was asked to start going. Just get up and go. And that's what he did. He started journeying. God revealed over time where that was going to be and when it was time to stop. So when God calls us, God is just saying, take a step. And our job is to discern what that step is going to be. What is that one thing? What is that first step of faith that we're going to take? Not really worrying too much about what will happen after that, but just focusing on doing that first thing. And then God will reveal the next and the next and the next. Now, in reality, when we plan, we're going to try to lay out all the steps, all the chunks, all the little things that we have to do to get from point A to point B. But we also know that there oftentimes are things that we're not going to foresee in advance, and that we're just going to have to be flexible. So the important thing about the focusing question is honing in on that first important first step. As Keller and Papasan say, success is actually a short race, a sprint fueled by discipline just long enough for habit to kick in and take over. And I think if you've taken any courses from me before or read any of my blogs, you know that I'm a big believer in this idea that we are really by nature not very self-disciplined, and people who achieve big things aren't really any more disciplined than the rest of us. What they've been able to do is they've been able to apply the limited willpower they do have to developing habits, developing the right habits. In other words, when you see people that seem like they're super disciplined, what you're really observing are people who are conditioned to have a handful of habits in their lives that really make a difference. I'm a big believer in this, and I've found that this is something that that occurred for me in my own life. In May of 2016, I decided that I wanted to start a blog, and I wanted to start teaching people about what I've learned about leadership. And so my one thing became spending 30 minutes a day in my morning working on that blog. And that was, figuring out how WordPress and how to get a domain name, and starting to outline blog ideas. And I started that by early June of 2016, and I launched in September. I probably could have launched a little bit earlier, but I wanted to make sure everything was correct. But that was just on 30 minutes a day. And then in November of that year, I I got an idea for a book, and I started writing 30 minutes a day. And by April, I had 90% on my manuscript. So my one thing became 30 minutes a day. And what's interesting about that was that that one thing has kind of pivoted or changed, because what I realized was actually my one thing now is getting a good night's sleep, preferably about 8 hours. Maybe I can do with a minimum of seven. Um, but if I get 8 hours of sleep, I know that I am going to get up and I'm going to be ready to roll. I'm going to do my morning routine, which includes my spiritual disciplines, but then I can get my 30 minutes of focused work in a day. So that has become my one thing. And I have realized that sleep is probably more critical than anything for me to be highly productive. So uh, the one thing is all about finding what little thing is going to be able to get you started and get you going. So that one thing might be, spending 5 minutes a day reading the Bible, or if you are looking to start a spiritual discipline, or just 5 minutes a day exercising, doing something active if you're looking to get into an exercise routine. It's the idea is to get started and to do something that you can turn into a habit. Now, the there's a kind of a follow-up question, two follow-up questions that they recommend, and these are: what obstacle or distraction will get in the way of my one thing, and what can I do to eliminate it? And this is really important, because if you start thinking about your one thing, what do you need to do to really up your game, to really focus on something that is going to make your life easier and better and more effective and more productive? Then you need to think, well, how can I get derailed? So, for example, if you are let's say your one thing is to just eat during a certain period of the day, and to you want to do that. You want to eat the right foods. So that it's all about focusing on nutrition. Well, one obstacle might be junk food and just eating mindlessly. And so if you get rid of all the junk food in your house, that will remove that distraction. Um, we had a course participant last fall who found that her one thing was just getting into the car at 5 a.m. and starting to drive to the gym. She had gotten a gym membership and enrolled in a program where they had specified workouts. It worked really well for her because it was about 35 minutes from her house, and she could spend that time in spiritual disciplines, driving. And then when she got there, she did her workout. She showered and then was able to go to work. Work was 5 minutes away, and be at work actually early and get ready for her day. So that was her one thing, was to just get in the car. And if she just got in the car, she was on her way to having a great day. Well, what she found was one of the distractions or obstacles was that she would wake up at 4:30 or whatever and feel like I'm not sure I want to go. I'm not sure I want to get up and go. And so what she did was she learned that if she put her work clothes in the car the night before, then it was actually harder to not go, because then she'd have to get up and she'd have to go out to her car and get her work clothes and bring them back in. And so that was something that was enabled her to eliminate an obstacle or a distraction, so that she could focus on her one thing. And she's still doing that routine. This is probably 8 months later, I think, and it's working for her. And now she is stacking other habits on top of that. That's something that when you start to apply your willpower to just little steps that help you develop important habits, once they become a habit, you don't have to think about it anymore, and you can stack. You can add another habit on top of that to really supercharge your effectiveness and the way that you can make a difference in your life and in the world. So that's it for this one. God be with you, and may you focus on your one thing.